Chapter 2, Positively Unstoppable, The Art of Owning It, by Diamond Dallas Page. Failure is not an option. It is in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. Tony Robbins. Okay, now it's time to get honest with yourself. Are you really ready to take the first step on your journey? Are you ready? I can't hear you. When I'm teaching a DDPY class and ask, are you ready? I expect to hear a definitive ready. And he does too. Otherwise, I'll say that's lame. So if your answer was a little weak, maybe with a bit of uncertainty behind it, I'm going to ask you again and expect some energy. Are you ready? I want to hear you in your own words, loud and clear. If you're like most people, your mind is probably working overtime to develop a cop-out answer to my question, such as, well, sure, DDP, I would like to make this change, but I'm scared I might fail. Well, screw that. Seriously, screw that. That nasty little three-letter word, but, is one of the most dangerous in our vocabulary, so I suggest you just throw it out. It's now time to make a decision. Did you know that the Latin origin of the word decide means to cut off? Personally, I interpret that as to cut off all other possibilities. So let's think a little bit like the Vikings would when they landed on a distant shore. You know what they did? They burned their damn boats behind them for all to see. They took that approach not just because they wanted to intimidate their enemy, though you can bet it scared the shit out of them, but also because their commanders wanted to make certain that every last soldier knew there was no turning back. It was victory or death. They knew that failure was not an option. So now it's time to scare the hell out of you, out of whatever it is that's holding you back, and finally defeat it. If you're ready to be positively unstoppable, then let's burn the boats and do this. Now you move. Now you move to action, taking the first step towards owning your decision. This might seem like a simple and obvious thing to do, but having worked with countless people, I can tell you that the act of beginning is where most people screw up and set themselves up to fail. They look for the escape hatch, the loophole, or if they're really good at bullshitting themselves, they will invent some delaying tactic. Most people delay taking ownership of their decisions, and most of the time they don't even know they're doing it. That's because they are held back by their negative self-talk, or what I call the bullshit story you tell yourself. Guess what? These stories you've been telling yourself all your life are not true. They're lies, and you know it. These stories creep up on us little by little over the years until they're just like a cuddly security blanket you don't even realize that you're carrying around. Just the way a belly pooch sneaks up on the ladies, or, for you boys, man boobs. Call them boobs. You know what I'm talking about, bro. You wake up one day and say, now how the hell did they get there? So I've developed a little mental exercise that you can do that's intended to inject you with a little truth serum. It goes like this. Write down one of your excuses and then follow it with the truth. Here are a few examples. They're the sort of BS excuses I hear all the time, followed by their truthful translation. Excuse. I'm not a morning person and I have a very busy schedule. The truth. Are you nuts? I'm not getting the hell out of my warm bed a half hour early to work out. I'd rather pretend that I'll do it later in the day. But later in the day I'll decide that it's too late and I'm too tired. Excuse. I've always had a sweet tooth. Truth is, stay the hell away from my donuts. Excuse, I hate change. Always have and always will. The truth is, I'm afraid to take a chance because I might fail. Or even worse, I might succeed. What happens then? Excuse, I've never been able to stick with an exercise program. The truth, I give up as soon as it gets a little difficult. And okay, I'll admit it. I'm a lazy son of a bitch. And we all know that's the truth. Like I said, getting started is hard. Becoming active is hard. On with it. You get the idea, so stop reading for a minute and write down 3 sentences that represent your negative self-talk, BS story, and truthful translation. Being this honest with yourself can be uncomfortable, but trust me, it's vital to this process. I know from personal experience, it took me 30 years before I started truly being honest with myself. There's your first homework assignment. where was it? Stop reading. Okay, you're listening to me right now. Just hit pause and write down 3 sentences that represent your negative self-talk. The negative BS that you keep telling yourself. All right. If you're at all like me, I'll bet that most of your negative stories you're lugging around have been with you since you were a kid. Maybe it's even a story that someone, perhaps even a loving parent or well-meaning friend, bestowed upon you. For instance, when I was in grade school, I was convinced that I was stupid when it came to the written word. Looking back on my report cards, I can see that I had some teachers who believed in my innate intelligence, but that didn't help me solve my reading or writing problem. So naturally, I lived in mortal terror of being called on to read out loud to the class. And the few times I attempted to do so, I was humiliated. It still stings to think about some of those moments. And so I did what most kids would do. I got really good at compensating. In fact, I made it all the way through high school and even spent some time in college. But the truth was that I really didn't know how to read. So I talked my way through classes, got papers written for me, and maybe even cheated on a few tests. I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth. Hell, I was 30 years old and reading at a 3rd grade level before I really addressed the issue. I had a pretty successful career managing nightclubs at the time, a job that required me to do things like develop killer marketing campaigns, create and approve advertising copy, and review employment applications. That kind of work wasn't a big deal for most people, but for me it was torture. So I faked my way through a lot of public situations, even when appearing on TV and radio. Fortunately for me, my buddy at the time, Smokey, was usually around to cover for me. So for the most part, I managed to slip by undetected. But I can assure you that when you choose to carry around a secret like that, you suffer all the time. My negative self-talk and shame was so powerful that I couldn't allow myself to ask for help. When I finally decided to burn that Viking boat and deal with my reading problem, thanks once again to my first wife, Kimberly, I discovered I had attention deficit disorder, ADD, and dyslexia. I wish I knew when I was growing up that I was at a legitimate disadvantage, but few even knew what I almost said AD&D. But few even knew what ADD and dyslexia were at that time. And the irony was that far from being a slow learner, I discovered that I was actually pretty smart. When I took an IQ test back in 2006, I was surprised to find that I had an IQ of 128. Obviously, I had a lot of work to do in order to become proficient at reading. I'll tell you more about that later in the book, but I decided to share this story with you now because I want to stress how important it is to simply get honest with yourself and to put your issues on the table. Tell the truth to someone you can trust, the way I told Kimberly. Obviously, she knew I had this reading issue for a long, long time, but it wasn't something we ever really talked about. It was only when I got sick and tired of carrying it around that I finally asked for help. The action I'm suggesting you take is to get this crap out of your own head and open up to another person. If you're hiding something, it's probably not good for you. Guys in particular have a hard time with this, and as I know from personal experience, it can sometimes be a killer. Remember, it took me 30 years to face my inability to read. So if you have something similar that you've been hiding or not addressing, write it down to make yourself accountable, and then make the decision to do something about it. There's no need to share it with everyone just yet, but don't just think it, ink it. So many people are hesitant So many people are hesitant to own their decisions because they have been programmed to focus on failure. Whether it's from the voices in their own heads or from what others have told them, you may have failed multiple times in the past. So you don't want to commit to something only to fail again. You must lose this fear. I'll honestly tell you, I've seen people whom others felt were lost causes, and yet they completely turned their lives around when they really put their minds to what they wanted to accomplish. This is DDPY's success story on Arthur Borman. I'll flip it around, but you're probably not going to see much. I tried setting this camera at the higher setting, even my other cameras, and then I can't see it. It just won't pick it up, so I apologize. All right, DDPY success story, Arthur Borman. Arthur Borman's what got me looking into this. I must have watched that video about 100 times. They called it the most inspirational story on the internet. Watch it. Arthur Borman, Back when I was just trying to get DDP Yoga noticed as a legitimate fitness program, I'd often email people who had invested in the DVDs. Keep in mind that I was only processing 1 or 2 DVD orders a day back then, so this wasn't too hard to do. I'd thank them for investing in the program and ask them for feedback. To this day, I still personally reach out to people who invest in DDP Yoga almost every day, and sometimes it can make all the difference. One day I got an email back from Arthur Borman, a disabled veteran who had served as an Army paratrooper during the Gulf War. His body was broken from the hundreds of jumps he had made out of planes and helicopters. You realize those paratroopers can't glide down softly to earth, right? They have to get out of the air and onto the ground as quickly as possible. They fall up to 10 to 15 feet per second. Think about that. With all the equipment they're carrying, they're going to break something if they land on it. I had sent Arthur my standard thank you email, and he sent back a heartfelt message. He had been a member of the Army Special Forces and had done more than 500 jumps prior to leaving the service in 1991. He left the service permanently disabled at 5 foot 6 inches. Arthur weighed 297 pounds by 2007, and he could barely limp across his living room, even with the aid of a back brace, 2 knee braces, and 2 canes. The process of getting out of bed in the morning and putting on the braces took 20 minutes with the aid of his wife. And it was like some horrible water torture. The doctors at the VA told Arthur that he'd never be able to walk normally again, and for 15 years he accepted that as reality. He was resigned to thinking of himself as a piece of furniture. He was no longer a fit Army paratrooper, but instead was morbidly obese. Here's his story. Arthur. And if you can see that picture, I don't know if you can see that picture, but I want you to go to YouTube and I want you to pull up Arthur Borman, spelled Boorman, and it's the most inspirational story on the internet. I want you to watch that story. I'm going to read it to you right now. I was at a low point because I was in a terrible amount of pain, and all the doctors could offer me was medication for pain management. Over the years, what am I thinking? I'm on YouTube. I'm posting this on YouTube. You know what? Link to Arthur's video is going to be down below. Sorry. I'm new to this. That's why we're reading a book. Okay, I was at a low point because I was in a terrible amount of pain, and all the doctors could offer me was medication for pain management. Over the years, several doctors discouraged me from trying to do anything like adopting an exercise program because they feared I would injure myself and make things worse, or that I would fail and get even more depressed. I don't mean to blame the doctors or my time in the service. These were all self-inflicted wounds. I kept on eating and getting bigger and bigger as a result, I couldn't do things. I couldn't teach my son how to ride his bike, for instance, because I couldn't run next to him. At the time, I actually wasn't looking for a weight loss program. In fact, I remember searching online for yoga broken back. I had some experience with yoga, and so I thought it might be able to help me. I wasn't even looking for healing. I was looking for the ability to sleep through the night. I was in immense pain. The pain was so bad that sometimes it would literally make me vomit. So I remember finding DDP Yoga. Actually, at that time, it was called Yoga for Regular Guys. So I looked at the video and discovered I could actually do some of the exercises while sitting down, and it gave me some hope. So I ordered the DVD set and started doing it a lot, and I was beginning to feel much better. Around that time, I started to get these emails from Diamond Dallas Page, except I didn't realize they were actually from Dallas. I just figured it was someone from their customer service department. But then, when he asked specific questions about my problems and suggested I send him some photos showing my present condition, it finally dawned on me that it was him. I thought, okay, this is going to be the end of that relationship. I guess I presumed he would look at the photos and see me as a hopeless case, as all the doctors and traditional yoga instructors had. Instead, once he had these photos, he sent me his DDPY Phase 3 eating plan and asked what I thought. I answered him with, I can do this. The next thing I knew, he was asking me for my phone number. And before I knew it, we were talking on the phone. The Phase 3 eating plan is the most extreme plan, intended for people like me who are in need of serious intervention. It meant I would have to completely change the way I eat, but it made sense to me. It didn't seem like some gimmick. When I looked at it, I said, I can do this. I remember that impressed him. But I had been on lots of diets and lost weight and then gained it back. So a big part of me didn't really believe that this time would be different. But then Dallas said something that changed my whole perspective. He couldn't have hit me worse if he had slapped me in the face. He said that if I didn't change what I was doing, I would leave my kids without a dad and my wife without a husband. And that every time I was stuffing my face with shit food, I was saying to them that I cared more about food than about all the years I was going to spend with them. And that was like, bam, do I really want to do this to my family? And everything changed just like that. You know, that's one of the things that got me started. I was bigger than him, and I'm only 5'4". I was at 310 the last time I got on it. I'll put that picture of me back up with so you can see what I looked like in my uniform walking the mall. Trust me, I was way more qualified. I got way more qualifications than that, but I was so fat I couldn't do anything else. All right, so I'm not going to tell you how that movie ends, how that video ends. It's 8 minutes, and it will truly inspire you. Watch the video. You know what? Honestly, this will probably ruin my ratings, but I'm just getting started right now. I don't care. If you want, you can come back, and I'm going to finish reading this chapter. Got a few more pages here. But I want you to pause it right now, and I want you to go watch Arthur's video, and then come back, and I'll finish reading DDP's book, because as far as I know, I'm the only one doing this. Okay? So, sorry, I just kicked the camera. All right, I'm going to keep reading while you do that, and I'll see you when you're done. That was impressive, huh? Told you you'd like it. All right. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I hold the men and women who serve our country in the military in the highest regard. We're back to DDP, by the way. It was one of the first times I had ever called a stranger to try to help them, but I did it because I felt like he was ready to do the work. After a couple of weeks of doing the program and eating plan, Arthur sent me an email with these powerful words at the bottom: I will walk again. I still get chills today thinking about reading that. For 15 years, Arthur believed what others had told him he would never be able to do. I had no idea whether he'd be able to do it, but I am a firm believer that what goes on between your ears is the most important factor in achieving anything. We all know people who have a great conviction and confidence in what they want, and those who do almost always achieve their goals. Now it's your turn. Before I give you the outcome of Arthur's story, I'm hoping you went and watched it and already know. But before I give you the outcome of Arthur's story, I'd urge you to first stop and search for the video entitled Never Ever Give Up. The most inspirational story. That comes after that. The beginning of the title is Never Ever Give Up. On YouTube or at the DDPY Yoga, ddpyoga.com. It's way cooler to experience it in its video form. Watch it. Arthur's progress over the next several months was nothing short of incredible. He'd send me photos and short videos showing how loose his pants were getting, and I could see he was rapidly transforming his body and his mind. In each email or phone conversation, he seemed to have more excitement in his voice. I gotta pause, hold on. Sorry about that. There was a time when I would let something as simple as people coming home and walking through the area I was working in be my excuse to not do my exercises, not follow my diet or anything. So, let's get back to where we're at. Alright, so the video is entitled Never Ever Give Up on YouTube or at the ddpyoga.com. It's way cooler to experience it in the video form, so watch it. And I'm serious, go watch Arthur's video. I had to watch that thing about 100 times. It's just amazing. All right. Arthur's progress over the next several months was nothing short of incredible. He'd send me photos and short videos showing how loose his pants were getting, and I could see he was rapidly transforming his body and his mind. In each email or phone conversation, he seemed to have more excitement in his voice. And I remember sending a friend and documentary filmmaker Steve Yu to interview him in the early in the process, just in case he was successful at what he was trying to do. I remember so vividly what happened about 10 months after Arthur began doing the program. He sent me a short video. I knew he had been practicing walking without his crutches and that he'd been using a single cane without his leg braces, and I'd seen him fall a few times too. I was sitting at my kitchen island and clicked the attachment. I saw this wooded area, some type of park. The camera footage was a bit shaky and I saw a tiny blip on the screen, moving toward the camera. As the moving object got closer, I soon realized it was Arthur walking toward the camera with no back brace, no leg braces, and no crutches. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I watched with intensifying anticipation as Arthur got closer to the camera. His walk became a jog. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. As he passed the camera, he turned back and started to run. At this moment, tears were streaming down my cheeks. Arthur did it. In just 10 months, he had lost 140 pounds, and more importantly, he had also lost the knee braces, the back brace, and those wraparound canes. He had healed his own body by eating the right foods and doing my workout. I was completely blown away. That story still blows me away. He went from crutches in a wheelchair to running in 10 months. 10 months. That was over a decade ago, and today I still call Arthur's story the greatest transformation in fitness history. He is the living definition of owning the decision to change. If he could do it, just imagine what you could do. So now it's time for you to get to work. Since Arthur is an expert on owning his own decisions, I asked him to simplify his message as much as possible for you, and here's what he told me. Number 1, do it. Number 2, stick with it. That's all there is to it. Capiche? Now turn the damn page and let's get on with it. Hopefully you can see this. That's Arthur. Incredible. So, excuses that I told myself. Told you one, it's too busy. It's too chaotic. Too many people come in. I got little kids got to go to school. I got grown adults that need help that I actually work for. I'm constantly doing my running. Those were my excuses. The truth? I still had time to watch TV. I still had time to stuff my face. I still had time to sleep in every day. And when I'm talking sleep in, I'm talking noon. How many of you do that? I know that y'all think, here's the other excuse I would tell myself about sleeping till noon. I just keep different hours. Bullshit. You don't keep different hours. You don't. Change your plans. Change your routine. You don't really have a routine to change. You need to start a routine. I got you. All right, next reading will be chapter 3. Bang! Get off the couch. All right, talk to y'all later.